Describe Microsoft Entra domain services. The Contoso IT team deploys a number of line of business (LOB) applications on computers and devices that are domain members. Contoso uses ADDS-based credentials for authentication and GPOs to manage those devices and apps. Now they're considering moving these apps to run in Azure. A key issue for you is how to provide authentication services to these apps. To satisfy this need, the Contoso IT team can choose to implement a site-to-site virtual private network (VPN) between your local infrastructure and the Azure IaaS. Deploy replica domain controllers from your local ADDS as VMs in Azure. However, these approaches can entail additional costs and administrative effort. Also, the difference between these two approaches is that with the first option, authentication traffic crosses the VPN. In the second option, replication traffic crosses the VPN and authentication traffic remains in the cloud. Microsoft provides Microsoft Entra domain services as an alternative to these approaches. What is Microsoft Entra domain services? Microsoft Entra domain services, which runs as part of the Microsoft Entra ID P1 or P2 tier, provides domain services such as group policy management, domain joining, and Kerberos authentication to your Microsoft Entra tenant. These services are fully compatible with on-premises ADDS, so you can use them without deploying and managing additional domain controllers in the cloud. Because Microsoft Entra ID can integrate with your on-premises ADDS, when you implement Microsoft Entra Connect, users can utilize organizational credentials in both on-premises ADDS and in Microsoft Entra domain services. Even if you don't have ADDS deployed locally, you can choose to use Microsoft Entra domain services as a cloud-only service. This enables you to have similar functionality of locally deployed ADDS without having to deploy a single domain controller on-premises or in the cloud. For example, Contoso IT staff can choose to create a Microsoft Entra tenant and enable Microsoft Entra domain services, and then deploy a virtual network, VNet, between its on-premises resources and the Microsoft Entra tenant. Contoso IT staff can enable Microsoft Entra domain services for this VNet so that all on-premises users and services can use domain services from Microsoft Entra ID. Microsoft Entra domain services provides several benefits for organizations, such as administrators not needing to manage, update, and monitor domain controllers. Administrators not needing to deploy and manage Active Directory replication. There's no need to have domain admins or enterprise admins groups for domains that Microsoft Entra Domain Services manages. If you choose to implement Microsoft Entra Domain Services, you must understand the service's current limitations. These include only the base computer Active Directory object is supported. It's not possible to extend the schema for the Microsoft Entra Domain Services domain. The OU structure is flat and nested OUs aren't currently supported. There's a built-in GPO which exists for computer and user accounts. It's not possible to target OUs with built-in GPOs. Additionally, you can't use Windows Management Instrumentation, WMI filters, or security group filtering. By using Microsoft Entra Domain Services, you can freely migrate applications that use LDAP, NT-LAN Manager, NTLM, or the Kerberos protocols from your on-premises infrastructure to the cloud. You can also use applications such as Microsoft SQL Server or SharePoint Server on VMs, or deploy them in Azure IaaS. All this without needing domain controllers in the cloud or a VPN to local infrastructure. The following table identifies some common scenarios that utilize Microsoft Entra Domain Services. Advantage, description, secure administration of Azure VMs. You can join Azure VMs to a Microsoft Entra Domain Services managed domain, which allows you to use a single set of Active Directory credentials. This approach reduces credential management issues, such as maintaining local administrator accounts on each VM or separate accounts and passwords between environments. You can manage and secure VMs that you join to a Microsoft Entra Domain Services managed domain. You can also apply required security baselines to VMs to lock them down in accordance with corporate security guidelines. For example, you can use group policy management capabilities to restrict the types of applications that can be launched on the VM. On-premises applications that use LDAP bind authentication. In this scenario, Microsoft Entra Domain Services lets applications perform LDAP binds as part of the authentication process. Legacy on-premises applications can lift and shift into Azure and continue to seamlessly authenticate users without any change in configuration or user experience. On-premises applications that use LDAP RAID to access the directory. In this scenario, Microsoft Entra domain services lets applications perform LDAP reads against the managed domain to retrieve the attribute information it needs. The application doesn't need to be rewritten, so a lift and shift into Azure lets users continue to use the app without realizing there's a change in where it runs. On-premises service or daemon application. Some applications include multiple tiers, where one of the tiers needs to perform authenticated calls to a backend tier, such as a database. Active Directory service accounts are commonly used in these scenarios. When you lift and shift applications into Azure, Microsoft Entra Domain Services lets you continue to use service accounts in the same way. You can choose to use the same service account that is synchronized from your on-premises directory to Microsoft Entra ID, or create a custom OU and then create a separate service account in that OU. With either approach, applications continue to function the same way to make authenticated calls to other tiers and services. Remote desktop services in Azure. You can also use Microsoft Entra Domain Services to provide managed domain services to remote desktop servers deployed in Azure. Considerations. When implementing the previous scenarios, the following deployment considerations apply. Microsoft Entra Domain Services managed domains use a single flat OU structure by default. All domain-joined VMs are in a single OU. If desired, you can create custom OUs. Microsoft Entra Domain Services uses a built-in GPO each for the users and computers containers. For additional control, you can create custom GPOs and target them to custom OUs. Microsoft Entra Domain Services supports the base Active Directory computer object schema. However, you can't extend the computer objects schema. You can't change passwords directly in a Microsoft Entra Domain Services managed domain. End users can change their password either using Microsoft Entra ID's self-service password change mechanism or against the on-premises directory. These changes are then automatically synchronized and available in the Microsoft Entra Domain Services managed domain. Also, make sure that any applications don't need to modify write to the LDAP directory. LDAP write access to a Microsoft Entra Domain Services managed domain isn't supported. The application doesn't need a custom extended Active Directory schema. Schema extensions aren't supported in Microsoft Entra Domain Services. The applications use a username and password for authentication. Certificate or smart card-based authentication isn't supported by Microsoft Entra Domain Services.